Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Annie.
And I am Dillon.
It's good to have you back, Dillon. On this show, we talk about games that we like, or maybe games that we don't like. We rant, rave, and ramble about them, and we always ask the question, what is this game?
And I was very happy to find out what this game was this week. This flew under my radar until this show, in which you had me play the game, and I absolutely adored getting into Dead Space this week.
And this is the Dead Space from 2008. It was remade, I think, like last year, the year before. I should have pulled that, but that's not the one we're talking about. So that's not the important one. This week, we have a guest with us, Mondays Weekly. Thanks for joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me on, and happy Halloween, I guess, since a horror game. Yeah, so I'm Mondays Weekly. I'm a streamer and kind of a shit poster on Twitter. And how can I go into that? Dead Space is one of my favorite games, and when these guys so graciously asked me to be on their show, I had to decide between this and Resident Evil 4, and I thought, you know what? Dead Space is a little bit more Halloween-y, and I know a lot more about it because I think I've beaten Dead Space 1 8 times in my life, long before I even started streaming.
Oh, it's a game I've definitely beaten a couple times. Dead Space 1, not too many times. Dead Space 2, though, I've probably 13, 14 playthroughs. I've never beaten hardcore mode because that's just a little bit too much for me, but, you know, whatever.
See, Dead Space 2 actually might be my favorite game, if not at least tied with Resident Evil 4, but I've only beaten it, I think, 3 times in my life because that final boss is complete ass, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Just put it out there. If you want to come back for Dead Space 2, I need a reason to play that again.
Oh, definitely. And I need an excuse to try to finally beat hardcore mode. Because last time I played it, I got to the train segment, the segment where you're upside down. I got killed by what are they called? I just call them boomers. And then I was so mad I didn't save at that point that I haven't played it in like 2 years because of that.
Oh, just raged when you were so far into impossible. The impossible mode I unlocked by defeating medium, and I was told in the new version you have to beat hard. Oh boy, I tried hard, and it took me quite a while to get my first death on medium with Dead Space. On hard mode, it was like early on in chapter 2, my first death.
So, for the listeners, Dead Space is a horror shooter game. It's a third-person, kind of over-the-camera, or over-the-shoulder camera. You are Isaac Clarke. You are an engineer who was sent to repair a ship called the USG Ishimura. It put out a distress signal saying, hey, we have some problems. So you and your crew go to repair it. You also have ulterior motives because it turns out that your girlfriend was also stationed aboard the Ishimura as a medical officer. So you have 2 reasons to go there, one personal and one professional. So the game starts with you just coming in, and I like the way it kind of sets it up. It's very simple. It's just a nice little, I guess cutscene, although it's very silent. It's just, it shows you a schematic of the ship, and then it shows kind of you flying in to the Ishimura over, I guess it's called a shock point drive, which is this version's like wormhole travel or light speed travel or whatever.
Or Mass Effect Relay, yeah.
Yeah, so the second the game actually starts, though, it starts with a video of your girlfriend, and it gives you a message, which is what leads you to come here.
Once you get there, the storytelling that they go through is another fantastic way. The eerie mood that they have all the time, just looking over your shoulder at every little sound. The introduction of new enemies, it's such a well-designed game. I can see why Mondays and you, Annie, are such a fan of it. And I heard that a lot of the stuff put in the remake of Dead Space was just quality of life from that they put in Dead Space 2 with like the anti-gravity sections and such, of just getting it even with that even. Yeah, oh yes, this first cutscene where like every time we got in this room where we weren't able to do anything, I tried to get out and help, and I was just realized eventually, oh no, they're introducing us to new mechanics.
Yeah, the game does a very nice job of holding your hand at the beginning and walking you through the things. Like even right here, it's horrifying and you're being chased by necromorphs. But even on the hardest difficulty, you can make it through here with ease. You can actually just walk through this hallway because they're scripted to try to miss you. It looks like panic inducing and everything, but the game is really at this point just holding your hand, trying to get you through and teach you, okay, so enemies can bust out of walls, they can bust out of the ceiling, they can convert other enemies. So
at that point, they haven't given you any type of attack option. So yeah, I am scared running for my life at this point with the body horror that is so well done throughout the game. On hard mode, he actually hit me once on my way to the elevator. In medium mode, yeah, I just went running and did not get hit at all.
Most people get hit once at least, but that's where I think the best tone setting comes from the game. Because, like you guys said, it's very hand holding in the beginning, but they instantly they just push you into the water. You lose your hand holding instantly, and they do funnel you into the hallway to the elevator, which is the safe point. But it's that instant, like you lose everything. You lose that safety blanket you were just now getting used to, and then you have to run from these horrifying monsters with no way to defend yourself, and you don't even know if this is a game where you can defend yourself if you're going in completely blind.
Right, because at this point you're just an engineer. You're just a guy here to do some repairs. You don't have any tools. You just have this little spacesuit. So you're running to this elevator from this hallway full of monsters, and if you have played this game before, you know that it's not really threatening, and you can kind of just play with the AI, because the game did come out in 2008, and it is very antiquated. So you can just trick enemy AI by just walking through doorways sometimes, and they'll completely abandon all thought of you and stop attacking you because you're in a safe area, and you can just troll AI.
That's what I noticed eventually was how safe going into a different room was. Like at different points I would get through the door and just run. The one enemy that regenerates itself, I kept running, and then at some point I realized, oh, he can't make it through that first door. I just need to get through the door. And the clip you showed there, well, any clip you show is another great game design of having your health bar incorporated into your attire. That's something that I really enjoyed, of being able to immerse yourself a little bit more with the health bar just part of you.
This health bar system on the back is called the rig. It's like you said, it's just basically your health bar. It is a in-world and in-game representation of your health bar. So it'll tell like people in game, like, oh crap, that guy's low on health. I need to get him some medical attention. But it'll tell you, the player, oh crap, I've got 1 bar of health left. Let me eat a health pack real quick.
Yeah, and it's even like it builds into the meta of the game as well, because we're not talking about Dead Space too much, but in the beginning of the game, you take a hit in a cutscene, and then eventually the character says, your rig is red. Grab, there's a health pack in the locker over there. So it's because it links up to the system where, at least in the first game, where everyone in your crew can see your system, your health bar, which you can't do this for everyone else because, who cares about their health? It's all about you, Isaac. So I think it's this interesting combination of gameplay mechanics and in-your-immerse meta. And then as time goes on, you realize there's no HUD whatsoever. Everything is on your back or on your gun. And then you can pull up stuff like this, as you see here, for your inventory. The
inventory is my favorite UI in video gaming, period. Any video game you can compare, like you can't compare to Dead Space, because there is no HUD, there is no, like, the only menu is like when you hit escape, so you can hit settings, resume, or quit, like, regular game menu. But in world, there's no crosshairs, there's nothing on your screen. Everything is a projection from your engineering suit. And everyone in the world can see what you're projecting because it's a real hologram. So you can physically move around with the menu on and still run around with enemies chasing you and manage your inventory in real time. And I think it is so cool because, as you can see here, it's also multi-layered. It's completely 3D. It's not just like a 2D thing that's being projected in front of you. It is multi-layered.
It feels like a real thing in the universe, and it's shown on the first cutscene in the game where Nicole's sending that message. Everyone else could see that as well. They could hear that. Isaac is just playing that for himself, but
yeah, he's just blasting it out.
Yeah,
just, hey everyone, I'm just gonna watch this video of my girlfriend again.
But that scene, that recording didn't show up. But that's the only time in the game you can see Isaac's face, except for the very ending. So if you turn him around, he's just got like this depressed, like almost like dipshit face. He's like staring at the screen. It's like goddamn, dude. It's like you couldn't have given him a more focused face. But it goes alongside the fact that in the original Dead Space 1, Isaac is completely mute. He does not speak, except for yelling. Which when Dead Space 2 comes out, it makes it kind of weird because Isaac talks all the time. So they had to retcon it in the remakes. It's like, no, Isaac's going to talk. We brought back Gunnar Wright, who's a fantastic voice actor. And now it makes sense in the timeline.
They also modeled Isaac's face in the remake to Gunny's. Instead of being like a kind of custom-made guy, it's more one-to-one to the voice actor.
I enjoyed that when reading about that of the remake. A lot of the characters were remade, redesigned to reflect their new voice actors, and just a little like quality of life upgrade is what I saw in the remake. Because like the tram system in between chapters that was implemented, intelligent game design, we need a load screen, so we're going to work it in that you're in the tram.
Load screen / levels, yeah, like it transitions you from one chapter to the next. You're in a new area with like a new set of objectives and a new story with a new map. So it like, yeah, they needed to put in the tram, but it's nice that coming back, I mean, I haven't played it, but the entire ship is open up and connected, and you can literally walk from one end to the other.
Yeah, and then the tram system is tweaked in the remake. And here's the thing: I'm a big Dead Space fan, and I'm also a cynical, bastard. So going into this, I was upset. I was like, they don't need to remake this game. The game, because you guys said it was a little antiquated. I can't disagree with that, but I think the game itself still holds up to this day, especially visually. So I was like, you don't need a remake, just make the Steam port work because it doesn't work very well. But as biased and cynical as I am, the remake was fantastic, and they just do these little tweaks, like the tram system. It's no longer just a cutscene; it's now it's a loading screen, but you have to sit in the tram for about anywhere from like 15 to 40 seconds, depending on how far you're going. And they use that as a chance to also kind of creep out the player. But I won't say how. I'll just say they use tone and lighting to screw with you.
That is a recurring theme throughout Dead Space, is the sound and the lighting. The more you play it, the more you realize which sounds are like active sounds and which ones are background sounds. But going through for like the first couple hours of the game, every single sound will scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, stop in place, look around. I wasn't able to differentiate that myself through by the end of the first playthrough. I was still very immersed between the sounds of like them. They're somewhere in the vents. They're coming down for me. Stop, look. Okay. That wasn't, as you said, that was a background sound. That wasn't an actual in-game sound.
Yeah, you really got to start worrying whenever you hear yelling and screaming. Then you're like, okay, somebody's probably about to kill me.
But the best part is when nothing happens, because it's even in the end of the game where it becomes much more action-based in the last segment of the game. It's still the entire time. It's like, is something behind me? Is something going to come get me? And then when I play the game, even to this day, I memorized most of the jump scares. But there are times where I'm like, wait, is something here or not? I can't remember. Is this the part where this happens? And there's plenty of fake outs too, which anyone who's a fan of horror movies or games, a fake out is the most important thing to do, but it has to be just built up just right. It's got to tease you, and then you're like, well, now I want to be scared, but I also don't want to be scared. It's a really fun dichotomy in your brain, I guess.
The jump scares feel earned, absolutely.
It is jump scare, like not heavy, but they sprinkle them in exactly where they need to be, because you'll be like safe for a couple of rooms. You'll be like walking along, you'll be like, okay, I'm backtracking through this room, going through this room, okay, I need to go this way. And this clip I have here is a good example. I just walk into a room, I check my locator, I'm like, okay, I need to go that way. So I just start sprinting that way and come around the corner without even thinking. The guy immediately jumps up, so I just have to pump some bullets into him. Because you never know when they're going to come.
Something I really like is that sometimes they will play dead after you take off a few of their limbs. So, like, I learned, do not just go over top of them. As I'm walking through and going over what appears to be dead, I will almost always give it a stomp.
As a veteran a veteran Dead Space player, that is, when I kill a necromorph, I either kinesis it with its own arm to confirm that it's dead, or I go and stomp on it. In Dead Space 2, that is reaffirmed because whenever you kill a necromorph, you have to hit it again to make it drop loot. So you want to make sure that all of your kills are confirmed in Dead Space 2. So I just always do that in 1 anyway. I kill a necromorph and I go and stomp on it.
Well, that's one of the improvements they did with the remake, because in Dead Space 1, you can't use the necromorph's claws with kinesis. It's like, come on, it seems kind of obvious. Dead Space 2, they add that, and then in Dead Space OG remake, they make it like, no, you can use that, and because by doing that, they can tighten up your ammo consumption more, as well as it also adds that melee element, which melee, as we talked about, you want to kinesis enemies, but you can also stomp and punch enemies if you have no ammo or if you want to conserve it. And it's very satisfying. It's very visceral, and they make it extra bloody. And Isaac swears a lot, which it's pretty funny.
Yeah, he screams and yells, and he, despite not having any lines, is a very, very well fleshed out character. Like they set up like his motivation silently. They set up his character silently, and they kind of let you, the player, decide how he feels in the moments, which is, I think, really good for the first time playing Dead Space. When you go to play Dead Space 2, like Monday said, Isaac is immediately talking, and he basically doesn't stop the entire game, which is a good thing, because you're like, oh, okay, I get to learn who this guy is. I get to feel what he's feeling, and connect with him more. So if I ever go back to play the remake of this game, I am so excited to be able to see and experience what Isaac would have in the moment, especially where it's obvious that he should have dialogue, where he's being straight up talked to and asked, like, hey, how are you doing? And you just shrug. Like, come on, you could say some words.
You mentioned the kinesis. You have the guns that you pick up, and the kinesis and the stasis I underused for quite a while into the gameplay, and then trying hard mode out for a little bit. Like the enemies in medium mode, like they drop loot every time or damn near every time. Not so much in hard mode. So like I was really struggling for ammo. So there was a lot more stasis of like the crawlers, and then attempting to just stomp their arms off, because I need to conserve this ammo. I know where there's and the stasis, you have to regenerate it either through packs, or if there's like a puzzle element, they very kindly put a free stasis regeneration area right before and after the puzzles.
Yep, those are your 3 major tools. Is you have your gun, which we'll get into right now. None of the guns in the game, except for 1, are like an actual gun. Every gun in Dead Space is a multi-use tool. The first gun you get is just a plasma cutter. It's just a small little beam that's used to cut rocks and flesh, and, well, it's just a cutting laser.
It was refurbished to cut flesh, because, like you said, the whole game takes place on the Ishimura, and the Ishimura is a mining facility, because little lore here is that in the future, Earth is basically dead, so they send planet crackers out to go crack open planets and take resources and materials back to the Earth. So almost everything in the game, every weapon in the game, is a refurbished mining tool. There's a flamethrower, the line gun, which is usually chop down trees, as well as the chopper. Everything in that, but it just becomes like almost a slasher film with, almost like Evil Dead. It's like you just take what you have and turn it into a weapon.
I absolutely agree with you. The Ripper is a perfect example. It is just a buzzsaw that's held in place by a localized kinesis field. So it's literally just a bandsaw.
And they also make sure it's extra visceral as well.
I did the plasma, the flamethrower, and the pulse gun, which basically worked like an AK-47. It felt like those were the ones I used on my playthrough. Is it the line gun that has you have to wait, you got to hold the button. There's a little delay.
Contact beam.
Contact beam. I actually stopped my gameplay. I had 2 save files. I think I was on chapter 8 when I realized I hate my life for having this contact beam and so much ammo. I'm going back to the previous save of chapter 5 and restarting it because I just wasn't working out for me, especially with the smaller enemies like the babies with the 3 tentacles that come out. I could not hit those at all with the contact beam.
It's every gun is very well thought out, and especially in the first game, is that everyone, it's a risk reward to it. Like the Ripper, for example, we talked about, it's arguably the best gun in the game, but it has 0 range. If you have to be right up on someone, but it has decent stopping power, and it does, like, I think the 3rd highest damage in the entire game, but you have no range unless you use the alt attack, which shoots it out, but then you have to reload your gun. The flamethrower, I think, is the 2nd highest, but it has 0 stopping power. Enemies will keep coming on you, but it burns through them. But everyone can agree that the best gun in Dead Space 1 and 2, by far, is the first gun, the plasma cutter.
In Dead Space 1 on Xbox, because I believe it came out on PlayStation as well, but there wasn't achievements at the time. So on Xbox, there was a famous achievement called One Gun, where the entire game, you don't use a single other gun. You don't put one in your hand. You only pick up that plasma cutter, you get off the desk, and you beat the whole game with that gun.
I'm curious to do that one, because it seems like it would be hard, but absolutely doable.
It's hard, but absolutely doable. Because once you get the hang of how to rotate the plasma cutter tip, depending on what enemies you're fighting, and if you can do that on the fly, the plasma cutter is the only thing you need, because it can cut limbs off in one hit on almost every difficulty with the max upgrade. So you can just shear legs off and then shear their arm off in basically 2-tap necromorphs.
Yeah, you could argue that it's designed to be challenging, but it might be the easiest achievement in that game, because I got that achievement at the same time I got to beat the game on the hardest difficulty. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a pain in the ass. But in the end, it's like, no, you're consolidating all your ammo and money into one gun. You have so many extra
power nodes.
You can, every time you get extra ammo from another gun, you sell that to me. That's free cash. And then, well, again, it's also, unlike every other gun in the game, you can change the angle from a horizontal to vertical, which is very important to this game. And then the only time in the game, in my opinion, that you really need another gun that becomes useful is the final boss, which no spoilers to anyone. There's a short, maybe 30-second segment where they invert your controls. So a precise gun like a plasma cutter is more difficult, even though it also has ridiculous damage.
Here, let me pull that up since you're talking about it. That exact clip.
I didn't want to spoil if anything.
No. It's, I mean, we're going to spoil the whole game, so I mean, who cares?
Just making sure.
But yeah, at the end of the game, you're fighting the Hive. But yeah, you get picked up, and then suddenly your controls are inverted. And if you're playing on a mouse, this part can be extremely difficult. You can see me missing almost every shot here. I'm panicking. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm gonna die. And luckily, I get a lucky shot in, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm still not being let go. So I'm still just spamming all my bullets, hopefully not dying.
It's the one part of the game I kind of recommend the pulse rifle, because it's funny, Dillon, you said one of the main guns you had was the pulse rifle. It's not a bad gun, but I always think it's funny because first-time players always end up getting it because, machine guns in a horror game are usually a safe bet, and it's something you're more familiar with compared to all these other weapons.
Yeah, very familiar based on other games.
Right, it's a gun.
The very first cutscene in the game shows that all those armed guards that have the pulse rifle, they all get slaughtered. I think it's always funny. It's like, no, regular guns aren't necessarily good in this game. You have to be creative with how you fight.
The regular gun can be good if you're really pinpointed shooting off arms, or if you are just using it to kill the little, the babies with the tentacles.
Oh, that's, I guess we didn't mention that. This game is different than pretty much any other shooter, especially a horror shooter, whereas headshots actually do very little damage. Body shots and headshots are worthless. You want to cut off their limbs because canonically, you can't kill a necromorph. Every single cell has been mutated so that they're essentially immortal, unless you were to completely eviscerate them, which, shout out to
Visceral Studios.
Yeah. It's so in canon, all you can do is dismember them so that they can't move at you anymore. Like if you watch some of the spin-off movies, it's like, no, they're still alive, but obviously that would break the game if every limb was still moving after you killed every enemy.
There is a enemy in the game that does do that. This enemy is made up of other enemies, essentially. It's just a tall, horrifying necromorph, and whenever you kill it, its arms will still crawl at you, and its individual organs will still crawl at you, and its head. This is a really cool necromorph that, unfortunately, only is like in this game. There are parts of it in Dead Space 2, and there are the head in Dead Space 3, but this tall necromorph is only in Dead Space 1, in Chapter 8, 9, 10, and I think 12.
I don't want to be that guy, but I will say, I don't know how many times it is, but it's in Dead Space 2 at least once.
This guy is?
Yes, he's in there at least once in... do you remember the hospital segment of the game in the very beginning that eventually you go back to in the second half?
Yeah, no, but you're right. Yeah. He's in there, like in the big atrium.
Because it has the most famous kill in the entire franchise, where it rips off your head and then puts its own head in place of it. So it's like they're not going to not use that. It's the coolest one in the game.
Right here, this is the best death. If you let this thing kill you, like Monday said, it will rip your head off, and it will become your head.
Oh, I did not experience this one. Oh, that is awesomely creepy. The clip you showed of the tall man, that's where the contact gun, I was like, fuck this. That in the next room, it was just doing me no good.
This is a little thing about me is I forgot most of the names in this, and I refused to learn most of them. That tall one, I always just called the Scarecrow because it looks like one to me.
Yeah, and he's got like the raggedy like shirt on, and I think that's a pretty. He also makes like a horrifying groan noise. I mean, all the necromorphs make horrifying noises, but you wouldn't expect something that deep, that loud, and that booming to come from a big, tall, skinny guy made of like flesh.
What's also interesting to me about that one specifically is that, again, it's made of separate parts. It might have come from the same person because a lot of it's just bone and intestines, but that means it came together and put that shirt on by itself. I always thought it's like, that's such a unique thing about it. It's like most necromorphs don't care about if they're naked or not.
Well, I mean, I guess the head kept some intelligence and was like, man, I want to look fancy. I want to look terrifying as I run at you with my little dangly bits.
The body horror is just so well done in this game, and the fact that you don't know that these creatures are your former crew members at first, but it gives you plenty of hints that these were once people before you learn that these are this bacteria is turning all these humans into itself.
That's one of the more interesting things about it, because the necromorphs are very interestingly designed, very intelligently designed, where when you first see them, they look humanoid, but because of the fact, especially with the slasher, the most common ones, you can't really see their forearms because they shrink and they curl up in their torso. You can see the claws in their back. So you're like, oh, these look humanoid, but you're not really aware that they were humans at some point. And then as time goes on, you see, oh, something is turning corpses and live humans sometimes into these monsters, and I've been killing what was originally the people around me this entire time.
Yeah, this is where you first find out how the necromorphs are converted. Like, it's alluded to through text logs and audio logs up until, but you get your first like direct experience here when you finally find the captain. You see one of these things straight up just in real time convert the captain right before your face. It's even more horrifying in Dead Space 2. That's actually the like opening as soon as the the prelude stops and you get control of Isaac. The first experience is one of those things turning a guy in your face into a necromorph, and you can see all of his face exploding off of him, and the bones changing and stuff. It's pretty horrifying. It's a great opening.
Yeah, another little funny story about me is that for the longest time I was a huge pussy and scared of like horror stuff up until I was like 20. But I bought Dead Space 2 on a whim because I was at Walmart once, and I was like, oh, it's $5. I did not look at the back of the box. I just looked at it. It's like, oh, this looks like a kind of a dark sci-fi game. It's like, it must be like Halo. 2 minutes into the game, again, you see an infector stab a guy in the brain and turn into a necromorph with his face coming off. And then I was like, oh, I made a mistake. and I could not finish that game for a long time because it was addictive. I kept playing it, but between the fear of jump scares at that time, as well as the game could be pretty difficult, but it became one of my favorite games. And then I went back and played one, which arguably is a better game, but I prefer the second one because it leans into the psychological aspect a little bit differently.
I do enjoy the text logs and audio logs. Every time I found one, I would read it from front to back, or just sit still so I would not be interrupted by a possible necromorph coming out at me. And the story going even deeper with a lot of the crew being part of a cult that actually wanted these necromorphs. It was a fun little twist as you learn throughout the game.
Yeah, you're talking about the unitologists.
I love the I believe it was the second in command. When you go to his room and find his diary, half the fucking crew are unis. List of known unis.
Yeah, it's definitely not Scientology in the future. Definitely not. I don't know why you guys are accusing that. I think it's kind of offensive to Scientologists and Xenu, our Lord and Savior. But it's basically basically in the future to break down unitologies that there was. We're allowed to talk about like more endgame spoiler stuff, right?
Yeah, we're going to cover the whole game, so it doesn't matter how we cover it. If you want to cover something, we'll talk about it.
Getting a little more spoilery, audience.
Yeah. Okay. We'll run back to this later, but essentially everything in the necromorphs are created by something called a marker, and about 200 years before the game takes place, roughly about I think 100 years, about 100 years after today, this time period, a marker was found on Earth, and by a man named Michael Altman, who we're not doing the expanded universe stuff. I've read all the books, but essentially he became the head of a new religion called Unitology, where they believe that these markers are being sent out by the aliens that created humanity to bring us to the next stage of evolution. Humans are all, like, I can't say Earthlings because most humans at this point aren't born on Earth anymore. Humans believe that somewhere out there is some kind of evidence of that evolution, and the marker is like equivalent to the cross in their universe. With a lot of these unitologists, you'll see figures and models of the marker, and it's a symbol of worship. So obviously, when a marker is found on Aegis 7, where the Yoshimura was, it becomes a pretty big deal to everyone, even non-worshippers.
Right, because it's confirmation of another one, despite the fact that it's not revealed until later on that marker is man-made. It wasn't actually like an alien thing that was put there. Humans reverse engineered the black marker that was found on Earth and were able to rebuild it and seeded different places throughout the galaxy, trying to do different experiments and seeing how the marker reacts and what it can do. Which it can do a lot. I mean, apparently it's some sort of power source. So, I mean...
We do find out that the government was aware that the marker was wreaking havoc. This was an illegal mining operation that they were going after. So the government knew we need to stay the fuck away from it. And the unitologists were just like, this is what Altman foretold. This is what Altman was telling us about. The government is suppressing the true religion.
The whole religion thing is kind of like a B plot, but the B plot in some cases is a lot bigger than what's actually going on. You repairing the ship and trying to get off of it is kind of like thrown to the wayside whenever you start getting into the text logs, the audio logs, and listening to all of the stuff that's going on and happening in the ship. And if you decide to get into the expanded stuff, there's comics, there's animated shows, there is
spin-off games,
whole on books, spin-off games. Some of them are pretty bad, but I mean,
well, Extraction was fun. See, it's funny because you don't really get into it much in Dead Space 1 because Isaac doesn't talk and he's kind of a blank slate because, mid 2000s, a lot of protagonists were silent. But Isaac personally hates Unitology. He hates Unitologists and hates them because when his father passed away when he was young, his mother, stricken with grief, joined the Church of Unitology and gave away all of their money and like all of Isaac's college funds. So he had to work his way through college, even though he had saved up enough money to basically get through. And the moment he got out of college, he got a job on a ship as an engineer and then never looked back. He has a very personal grudge against them, which they never go into too deeply in the games, but you kind of, especially when you get to 2, when he starts talking, you can like feel the content in his voice. But a lot of people misattribute that because of the events of the first game, because another spoiler, unitologists are dicks.
That's not really a spoiler. I think that could be said of any organized cult religion that are secretly doing things and trying to genocide people to ascend them. So yeah, they're kind of ass.
The way the game makes you have suspicion on your friends, I believe it's just Hammond and Kendra from the ship who are still there with you. And Kendra, she's like at the communication center or whatever, and Hammond is also out there. And the whole time, there's suspicion thrown on Hammond by Kendra. And at some point, you as the player start suspecting everybody of being part of this bigger conspiracy, and not knowing who to trust. Even your girlfriend. Like at some point, I'm like, something's wrong. There's a twist coming. She's a uni too, isn't she? I'm not sure what's up with the girlfriend, but I think she's like at the end when you're putting the marker back where it belongs on the planet to keep it away from you. I'm like, somehow she's a unitologist, and we're going through with this to help her. She's going to turn on us, make us whole again. Isaac, what does she mean?
The game does a great job of alluding the entire time of what's happening. And it is like a eureka moment at the end of the game when you can finally, in your head, put together all of the clues that have been floating around. And you finally are like, okay, everything makes sense now. The game alludes to, from the very beginning, that Nicole is dead. The game starts with Chapter 1, New Arrivals. And if you look at the chapter names of every chapter throughout the game, the first letter of every chapter spells out Nicole is dead.
This is not a surprising thing because it was everyone that played the game. That blew my goddamn mind. I love, it's a personal thing, I love when games or media put answers and spoilers right in front of your face, but you can't put it together because you're not looking for it. Going in further with Nicole's dead, is that first cutscene that we showed earlier with Isaac watching that video of Nicole. He doesn't watch the entire thing. That's a suicide video. It ends with Nicole committing suicide due to because everyone's dying and she knows she's not going to get away. That's her final goodbyes to Isaac. But either Isaac cuts it off there, or you as the player, as Isaac, he just mentally blocks it out because it's implied that Isaac is being affected by the psychosis and schizophrenia that the marker provides by the time he's coming in. So Isaac may have known was either going to find Nicole, trying to look for her, or trying to recover her body.
Yeah. At the very end of the game, Kendra confronts you and is calling you out, being like, hey, you're just as crazy as everyone else. You need to look at yourself and finally watch that fucking video, like, to the end this time. So you finally have to actually watch the whole video, and as Monday said, it's like a suicide note. She sends Isaac an apology, being like, I can't handle what's going on here, and I'm not gonna let what's happening here take me. So I'm gonna have what little power I have left, and I'm gonna KO myself. So she lethal injections herself, and Isaac finally realizes, oh shit.
Again, that's why I love this part, because it comes down to, again, as Isaac's developing schizophrenia from the marker. So it brings up the question, was Isaac aware of this the whole time and he's just now coming to terms with it? Or did he really not understand this and now it's just finally clicked together?
This scene right here kind of alludes to the former. It alludes to that the entire time the marker has been fucking with you, at least since like chapter 3 or 4 when you first start getting messages from Nicole. In here, right here, you can see all of the screens in this room being affected by like marker code, and the concordant symbol is like glitching all over the place. It kind of heavily hints right here that, hey, Isaac, you're fucking hallucinating pretty hard right here, and you are it's like a Fight Club moment where he is Nicole.
Yeah, but as Dillon said, it's even near the end, it's like, well, is she a unitologist? And because at this point, you understand that there's some level of supernatural events occurring. So you're wondering, is it Nicole that's doing this? You're constantly second guessing yourself because you're not, they give you everything, but you give you all the puzzle pieces, but you're not sure how to put them together. So you, when I played it first time, I was like, is this me or is this her? Either way, it's one of us, and I don't think it's me. But how is Nicole doing this? I never attributed it to the fact that it's like, oh no, this is everything is not real. Isaac's basically just walking around in an empty room, and because again he's going crazy as time goes on, which is one of my favorite aspects of the story.
You get the audio clues as well. To me, it was I was just thinking, oh, this is kind of just creepy. I didn't put it together that the whispers that you start hearing, along with the ambient noise and the sounds of the necromorphs crawling through the vents, those whispers aren't there. To me, it was just more atmosphere that I wasn't looking too much into. But that's you going crazy. The whispers that start happening at different points throughout just walking around the game.
Throughout the game, yeah, you start just getting straight up audio recordings from Nicole, and in between there, you can just hear the ship like intercom system come on. And at the beginning, it was like real broadcast letting you know about like the tram schedule and, you know, hey, dinner's in the mess hall, stuff like that. But later on, it just becomes creepy whispering, horrifying, like ASMR whispering in the background, like chanting sometimes, reading numbers, sometimes just reading the regular old broadcast announcements, but just creepily whispering them as Isaac is just slowly losing it. And it's a psychological play for the player trying to decipher, am I hallucinating, or is this actually like the ship is fucked and there's somebody in the broadcast center whispering over? Is it Kendra doing that? Because she does mention that she starts seeing her brother, so she knows that she's also hallucinating.
Yeah, it's an obvious reference. This game wears a lot of its inspirations on its sleeve. The two most obvious is not even Alien. Everyone thinks it's supposed to be like Ridley Scott's Alien. No, the two is John Carpenter's The Thing, and a much more divisive movie, Event Horizon, which is about a ship that goes to hell, and then people on it that end up boarding it go crazy.
That's a fucking good movie.
It was so bizarre and weird, and it's like it's kind of a movie where nothing happens except for people are just going crazy. It's very good, and I think the very transparent, like, yeah, we know what this is, and we're also Resident Evil 4, but we're going to do our own mishmash take of it, but with a new sci-fi universe, which is one of my favorite universes I've ever read, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love the Dead Space IP. It's so deep and horrific, but it doesn't expand out further than it needs to. You don't start asking random questions like, I wonder what the like civilization on Mars is like. Well, that's not important at all to the story, even slightly. So they never touch on it. And unless it's directly important to a character, they don't even talk about that kind of crap. So the world is super expanded in the like books and all of this stuff, but it's also very contained in its own space. It does a great job. I got to be honest.
Everything basically, there's nothing really mentioned in the game that doesn't somehow relate back to Isaac or his situation. If it talks about a character, it's talking about like what's going on with them, which relates back to what the hell is going on this ship. Why is these awful things happening to Isaac? He just wants to find his girlfriend. I think that scope kind of helps keep it very tight in the story and makes it interesting, because if they wanted to, they could expand on everything, talk about like how long humanity's been out in space, been making different civilizations. Like, no, we're just kind of focus on what we have here and give you little nuggets of information just so that's like just enough so you're not really wondering. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, I have just enough and my brain will put the rest of the story together for myself.
I do have to thank the developers for that, because I became very invested in this whole world. So if they put more than just little nuggets, I totally would have been tracking down every teeny little bit of lore that was littered around this game. But yeah, as you said, the text log, the audio logs, the alien language written on the wall. After you defeat the game, it kind of gives you the cipher at the end to figure out what all the alien language was that was scribbled on the walls, in addition to the English words. That one of my favorite was "fuck this ship." When you first get the plasma cutter, it has sprawled on the wall, cut off their limbs. Fantastic, thank you. It makes sense in story that someone would sprawl that on the wall, and then sprawled on another wall. There's just another fuck this ship. Nothing to, no hints, but yeah, that makes sense, and I like that a bunch.
It's a lot like the graffiti you see in Left 4 Dead 2. It's like, we didn't deserve this. Yes, you did. It's like, I didn't. Fuck you, buddy. And again, it also goes into the meta where the game doesn't. The game eventually does tell you that you need to cut off their limbs, but not. It's not the first thing. The first thing you do is that you see that sign that says "cut off their limbs." It's telling you without the game holding your hand in that aspect, because eventually it's like, look, we need to tell them because they haven't figured it out, or maybe they missed that somehow.
Maybe they can't read. I don't know. Yeah.
It's like they will not be able to progress through the games. Like, you could probably do it. I've seen people, do melee runs of the game, but it's so difficult. It's like we want to make the game challenging, but that's one of those impossible run kind of things that psychopaths do.
Absolutely.
And the bosses you couldn't melee. I was actually very happy, like the way they build up the bosses too. The one boss, the Leviathan, they're building that up through the whole chapter. There's something big in there. I was actually relieved, a little disappointed, but relieved I was able to kill the Leviathan on my second attempt. Took me out my first attempt, but yeah, just 2 attempts and goodbye Leviathan.
Yeah, the boss fights they're just challenging enough. Once you learn what they can do, it's really easy to just kind of walk out of the way of most of their attacks. But the first time, they set it up very well each time. The Leviathan is the first one. I believe it's in like food storage. And then the next one you fight on the hull of the ship, which is like this big giant tick that's blocking the communications.
You got the giant cannon. That was a fun. I like variety in gameplay. So the little cannon with the variation of gameplay was fun.
Yeah, this is my unpopular opinion. I actually like the tick, or as I call it, the crab boss fight, because yes, it's frustrating, but compared to the first gunner segment, which you have to shoot a bunch of meteors, it's much
Way easier.
But if you play on the hardest difficulty, that took me about an hour. Both of them took me about an hour to beat, because you have to basically be as efficient as possible without firing even a wasted shot. But it also feels good to have that gun. It's like, look, this is by far the strongest gun probably in the franchise, frankly. And it's like, well, it's an actual gun. It's weird. I love all the weird shit in that game.
Oh, absolutely.
Something I found frustrating was having to. You have the store where you can sell all the stuff that you're not using or ammo that you're never going to use. And I did like a complete, at least an hour of backtracking, so I could pick up all those little pieces of loot that wouldn't fit in my suit level 2 or 3, whatever it was at the time. Eventually level 5, you've got many slots, but just so much backtracking. And then I started doing the little cheat of moving it with my telekinesis and putting it just on the inside of the door. Mm-hmm. So then I can mass grab it at that point and sell it off, because I need that money. I need those power nodes to upgrade my guns. I need more pulse rifle ammo.
Yeah, the money is more and more important on the harder difficulties. The game does not give you any leeway. It gives you just enough to get through.
It doesn't, but don't forget there's always Peng.
Yeah, you can't forget about Peng. Did you get Peng in your playthrough?
I didn't get Peng.
I'm so glad Annie picked up on that, because I was like, if neither of you said anything, I was like, oh, I brought this whole show to a standstill with my bad joke.
You finally go back to the shuttle bay, and if you come down here and look over the side, you can see a little statue of Peng, which is I believe she's an actor, singer lady. She's some famous lady in lore.
Mm-hmm. It's a little in-game joke with the developers, where that thing does absolutely nothing for you, but it's always worth 30,000 credits. So it is very important that you find it. So if you don't get it at that point in the game, which is I think chapter 2, you can't get it till chapter 11. Mm-hmm. So, and early game, it's probably the most important, because it lets you kind of set your character up a bit stronger. But in late game, it is good to have, like, hey, I have no spare ammo or stasis or health, so it doesn't hurt to have that. But Ping is also in every single mainline game.
Yeah, in my hard playthrough, I will need that.
Something that I really like is that there's a new game plus. So if you decide to play again, you can carry over your upgrades and everything in your vault. So if you just are continuously playing the game, you can have so much stuff in your store that you don't ever need to worry about things. Like if I ever decide to play Dead Space 3 again, I have so much crap in my vault that I could give anyone like a whole set of stuff. Be like, here's 25 large health packs. Go sell them and buy power nodes. Here's any ammo you need. The game incentivizes hoarding on repeat playthroughs.
Oh yeah, but this is more of a nostalgia aspect of it. Dead Space 1 has my favorite thing. 'Cause unlike most games, especially nowadays, it has cheat codes. It has a bunch of cheat codes in the start title screen. That I opened up my 360 copy the other day, just kind of looking through it. I found my old scribbled note sheet that I had. It's every cut, everyone. It gives you you can get, I think,
stasis refill,
stasis refills, a bunch of power nodes, a bunch of money, a bunch of oxygen tanks, which no one keeps. You just sell those. If you know
fuck that. Yeah, those are the. I only use those once in the entire game.
I used them the first time I played 2, but then you realize you don't have to be efficient as long as you move quickly, and they usually put O2 tanks everywhere, because if you don't, you die instantly if you run out of air. So that could be a soft block if you're not careful. So the O2 tanks, they're like, it's one of those things where every time I see it now, I'm like, if I use that, I have to restart my run, because clearly I'm not good this time. I need to practice more.
Right, you need to figure something out.
The O2 tanks are something, I always kept 1 or 2 in my storage, because you just need to get efficient at those segments where you're running out of oxygen. And I believe the meteor shower part where you're running on the ship was the one point where I absolutely needed to use one, because I just didn't have the timing down. I don't think I found, and usually I think everywhere they have the like the stasis refill, they have the oxygen refill somewhere.
Yeah, you have to find it, but yeah, it's usually out there because they don't want you to be like fucked. Well, something that I think is nice, I didn't take the opportunity to do it, but when you upgrade your rig, it only costs 1 power node right off the bat, and you can just get plus 20 seconds air. So if you're struggling, you can just save up 10k, buy a power node, and get 20 seconds of extra air capacity just for 1 power node. You don't even need like a junction node to connect the two things.
Yeah, but I'll just say that upgrading your air, unless it's the last thing, it's only for scrubs.
It's waste.
You upgrade your O2 when you have nothing left to upgrade and you don't want to buy a new gun. That's me being an elitist.
No, you only upgrade it when you have every other gun upgraded, because the O2 you don't need it.
Yeah, but again, I can understand why, because I'm sure that when they're playtesting the game, a lot of people either before they added the O2, they're like people getting soft locked because they were dying or running out of air, and it's one of the only situations in the game where it's an insta kill. I think there's maybe 5 total. Everything else is like you have to just get stabbed to death by monsters or bitten or eaten, or have your head ripped off by a baby head.
Yeah, everything gives you like a quick time event before it kills you, except for a couple of things. One of them is the big fat sacks of screaming goop on the wall that have tentacles. If you walk close to them, they'll shoot a like scythe out at you and cut your head off instantly.
It took me a while to realize I didn't get too far up close to those ones against the wall. But all the little babies that they shoot out at you, it's such a pain in the ass. I think there's only one section where you encountered 2 of the wall monsters at once. Oh boy, that took a couple lives.
I think that's chapter 12.
Yes, yeah, it was right near the end when you're actually on the planet.
Yeah, and that's because that whole that last segment of the game is just a gauntlet. The one room, I don't know how to show, I just call it the room, where it's just, and it is probably it can be up to like 15 minutes worth of nonstop fighting of waves and different necromorphs. But
that was my favorite part, actually, was the room where it's just wave after wave of all the monsters one by one. And you'd been introduced to the super fast ones at that point, right? At some point, the super fast ones came to the room too.
Yeah, they're one of the interesting ones, because it's one of those situations where it's like, could have been completely avoidable, where Hammond captures a necromorph early on in the game into an escape pod, and he's like, you know what? It's more of a risk to us if we just leave it here, so we'll launch it into space. And you're constantly he starts sending out a signal for people to help you. It's like, hey, look, we need EarthGov to come save us. EarthGov is like the military and basically runs all of humanity. They're like, USGA Shimura, we got your distress call. We found your escape pod. And then Hammond's like, oh no, god damn it. Don't open. He's like sending, he's like, don't open it. And then the next video you get from them, the ship's on fire and people are getting slaughtered because it's going around killing people, causing the infection to spread. And a bunch of these soldiers are all armed with stasis, with the equipment you found, which slows down time. But because of that, for some reason, it gets inverted, so they become twitchy and very quick. They're the fastest enemy in the game for that reason.
Yeah, they can dodge bullets with their crazy sidesteps. They can backpedal super fast, and they can sprint faster than the crawling guys with the tails can even jump at you. They are unbelievably quick, and they don't do a ton of damage, but they do just as amount of damage as anyone else. So if you're playing on a hard difficulty, one hit from them is like, well, there went a medium-sized health pack.
Yeah, it's frustrating with those ones because then basically to kill those things, you have to predict where they're going to land and shoot them preemptively, or you have to use a stasis. And then when you stasis them, their dodges are still pretty quick, so you could miss even if you hit them with a stasis.
I always try to cut off their legs. Then they still, crawl at you super fast. But if you're quick on the draw, they're pretty easy to deal with. When you finally get on the ship, it comes in from the Valor is the ship that we're talking about. It picks up our escape pod and it opens it up, and then the Necromorph just fucks up the whole ship and kills basically everyone, and then the ship comes on a collision course with the Ishimura and crashes into the side of it. So we have to go in there to get a singularity core, which is essentially a piece of machinery that'll power up the shuttle that we found in a different part of the ship.
Yeah, and I misspoke earlier. The Necromorph's not spreading the infection, but at that point they're getting close enough to the marker for them to start mutating even before they end up landing on the ship. So, and by the time they crash into the Ishimura, they're basically ground zero, that there's no chance their corpses won't be infected.
They haven't had a chance to get infected, the corpses, because of the I don't know what they're called. They're like the little bat ones that infect them. There's not like any of them on the ship.
I call them infectors. They're the primary way of turning a corpse into a necromorph, but a regular corpse, if you give it enough time, will eventually melt into goo and turn into an infector. And I believe in canon that some of them will just turn into random slashers, other ones, but they're the most uncommon. From straight mutation, it's the infectors, and the infectors' job is obviously to go around and make regular necromorphs by injecting them directly into the brain.
Yeah, they function like a disease, but they're not. They're like zombies. They're a really interesting, like, sci-fi enemy.
Well, yeah, they have a big. They shape like fleshy bats, but they also have what's called proboscis from things that butterflies have, and they shove them into its victims' skulls. Either it's usually a course, but as you see in Dead Space 2, they do go after living humans occasionally, and it's every time I see that, I keep getting weirded out because I think, oh yeah, that was a human at one point, and it just in one of the books it describes it as it starts melting, the flesh starts basically wriggling into goo and then reforms itself after all the bones break and reassemble itself into that shape.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's like the ultimate level of body horror. This game does everything up to 11. Everything it does, it goes hard. With the body horror, with the sci-fi hologram elements of not having a HUD, literally everything in the game is like physical. Giant machinery, since everything in the game is a machine, since you're on the Ishimura. There's a part where you have to refuel you have to refuel the engines because they're out of fuel because somebody drained them because they didn't want the Ishimura to be able to leave. So you go in there and you just slide like a little old lever, and then you look in the distance and the engine is hundreds of feet big. It's in an entire room, and as soon as you switch the thing, the entire room starts rotating. The engines move. There's all this machinery going on. It's so cool to just stand there and just watch the things in the Ishimura do what they do.
Yeah.
One of the body horrors that really got to me were the ones that were poisoning the air, making the atmosphere more acclimatable.
Yeah.
You know what word I'm trying to say there, to the bacteria, because they're still looking very human. Like, to me, I'm like, I think they may still have consciousness, but they're the most easiest to kill. I just go over and stomp them. So that's a funny little thing of just, all right, objective complete.
Oh yeah, no, there are several enemies in the game that, like you said, the guys that are stuck to the walls that can insta kill you, and there's the weaker versions of them. Uh, I can't remember, but I believe it is confirmed that they're one of the rare necromorphs that do still have their consciousness, but they can't control their bodies anymore. So they are aware of everything and they feel everything as they're,
That came across to me. That was very well done. I felt like, yeah, those poisoning ones, I think they still have consciousness. So, yeah, confirmed. Ugh.
Those ones are a great body horror one because they're like on their hands and knees because they're in pain and mutating, but their flesh is like melted together, so they're stuck in that pose.
their
And then
lungs are sticking out from their backs as well. And they're obviously designed to look like mushrooms and at least spores.
yeah, they have huge mutated lungs that are just like a giant hunchback, and it just pulsates and undulates as it breathes in all of this poison. It's horrible, and they make horrible noises, and they're definitely conscious based on the sounds they make. The necromorphs are just like roaring, grunting, squelching noises, but then there's a couple of enemies that are like, "Ah!" It's like, man, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, I like to think it's the worst case scenario for them. It's like, it's not even that they're conscious, but they still feel pain. So it's like, it's like they're just suffering for suffering's sake. It's like the marker's like, you know what? I'm going to screw with just a specific subset of groups just to be a dick about it.
I like the variety of enemies. There is so many. There's also like the elite variants of each of the enemies, and then some of them have armor and also armored elite versions. So there's like tiers of their own enemies too, and they throw them at you in just batches.
The elite version of the crawlers with the whipping tail, I hate those. Those got me quite a few times. I got used to the regular version of the crawlers. It's still kind of difficult for me to hit at times the way they move, but the elite version that are just much faster and more aggressive, they got me a good many times.
And they also have a lot more health. As Annie was mentioning earlier, that there's two ways to deal with, especially the slashers. You can either chop off their claws, which prevents them from doing as much damage, because at that point, all they can do is bite you. But the majority of people, myself included, prefer to shoot off their legs, because they can still deal about the same amount of damage, but they're much slower. So the devs were like, well, shit, everyone's shooting off their legs. How do we deal with this? Well, a lot of these guys wear either military or guards on us. So their legs are actually generally similar, except, obviously their shoes get torn up because they have claws.
Mm-hmm.
So in exchange, their legs their pants don't tear up, unlike their torso. So let's just give them body armor on their legs. So they make it more difficult to shoot their legs as opposed to their arms.
It's not impossible, but you do suddenly have to adapt on the fly. Do I want to dump a couple extra bullets into the legs to take them, or do I quickly aim for the arms and take those out? I remember the first time. I haven't played Dead Space 1 in a long time, so coming back to this was a nice refresher. I remember the first time I saw one of the military leg guys. I'm just like clearing a room, I'm blasting everybody. I'm playing on easy because I'm just going through the first time to just sprint through the game. And I'm just like blasting, I'm killing the necromorphs in like 2 bullets, and then that guy comes around the corner and I just keep shooting him in the leg, and I'm like, oh fuck, he's armored.
Yeah, it's little things like that it's also because the lighting, it's not as dark as Dead Space 2, but sometimes it's just dark enough so you don't see these little changes immediately. So again, the armored legs is like, sometimes even me, I consider myself a veteran, which is kind of snobby, but I'm cool like that. You shoot them in the leg, it's like, wait, well, how come they didn't blow off their leg? And then you look.
We've been playing this game for 15 years. I think we can qualify for it.
I know, but in my experience, I don't. The moment I talk highly about myself, I usually do something stupid. Anyone that watches my stream will understand that. But that's another reason why the elites, I call the advanced necromorphs, I call them the elites, the ones that have like the burnt skin.
Yeah.
They are more difficult and they're much more aggressive and deal more damage. But in Dead Space 2 specifically, I kind of prefer them sometimes in specific locations because they're harder to see. But when lighting's really bad, that game is much darker, but you get light off your visor. But you can always see where they are because their eyes glow. Yeah. So it's like you're trading off combat difficulty for better visibility, because a lot of times in Dead Space 2, some of the regular necromorphs, you don't see them until they're right up on you because the lighting is much poorer, but not in a bad way.
And also sometimes the necromorphs have learned to stop screaming at you and start walking at you. So they'll like creep up behind you as you're like blasting regular ones. This guy will just creep up behind you and then be like, or get you locked in one of the QTEs and suddenly grab you. And then now you're out of the combat and you have to spam your whatever button you have it assigned to.
Yeah, but they don't do that often. It's pretty rare for a necromorph to sneak up on you and then get the cheap bite. They're usually programmed to just attack you to get the one hit off.
Yeah.
It's very rare for them to bite you from behind unless it's during a big melee battle, a big brawl, whatever. You know what I mean?
Where they're coming from multiple directions. That's where the exploding ones got me a few times. When I'm aware that they're coming over here, but I need to focus on this section. Focused on that section a little too long, and bam, hit me with the giant exploding limb.
Yeah, if you're going to get grabbed or exploded, it's generally your fault because it's again, the game is obviously heavily inspired by Resident Evil 4. It's if you're not looking in all directions as much as possible and you're focused on one group of enemies and you get attacked, well, that's on you. It's not on us. The exploders, though, they always make sure to make a note of that because it's usually a scripted event and they have a very distinct shrill screech. So even if you don't see one, you know it's going to be there's one nearby.
Yeah, they have an audio cue whenever one spawns and targets you, and then there's like another audio cue when they're about to swing their arm to explode it. So they try to set you up to not get one hit killed by them, but it's not always that easy because they send them in packs. Sometimes, though, you just get caught in a corner and you don't have the option anymore to run around or anything, and you just have to just open fires and start spamming stasis, getting bit because you're not planning ahead. So the game can get really difficult just out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, there are significant difficulty spikes. The most I'm trying to think of Dead Space 1. They're more noticeable in 2, but in 1, I'd probably say the first difficulty spike is in what's it called? It's the sanitation room down in the past the medical wing where you have to be in this room that they're delousing you, and it's basically a big steamy shower, and enemies keep breaking in, so it's taking away enough visibility, but it's not darkness. It's blurriness, which is again we Dillon mentioned earlier. He likes that mix up in gameplay. Mm-hmm. This one is a little bit different than you're used to, so it's that mental change. It's like, oh, you're on higher alert than usual in a game where if you're gonna get into it, it's like, oh, you can get stabbed in the spine at any point because you're constantly in danger from enemies that could be anywhere.
Even the safe rooms aren't always safe. You'll like walk in and you'll like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna walk up to the bench, and you'll open it up, and suddenly a necromorph will jump off the wall and start attacking you while you're like in a cutscene or whatever, and you're just like, I thought it was safe. Even when there's a save panel on the wall, you think, okay, there's a save in this room. It's got to be safe. Nope, there's a guy about to bust out of that window as soon as you go up to that save panel.
There is one bench, yeah. What is it, chapter 10, I think, where after you put the nodes in, there was one right up on you as soon as you get out.
It's just the one. If they used it more than once, it would have been cheap, and then that'd piss everyone off. But it's just the one. And if you're quick, you can actually prevent getting hit from that one because, especially me and Annie, because we've played that so many times, we know whenever we see that bench, Annie, I'm assuming you and me are the same. It's like, all right, let's just do this one, get it over with, and just make sure it's safe for the future. In the remake, it's
immediately open the bench, close the bench, and backpedal, expecting that guy to hit you.
Yeah, but in the remake, it's insidious because that same bench is there. It's moved slightly to a different part of the room, but I saw it. I'm like, that's the one. So I immediately walked over to it. I pressed it. I turned around. It's like, oh, it's not here. It doesn't come after you till you leave that room and come back to it. It is set up so it's like the second or third time. It's like because the game is built around, okay, well, people have been playing this game for 15 years. We need to find a new way to fuck with them because they're expecting everything. So everything's just slightly remixed to make you uncomfortable.
We've mentioned it, Resident Evil a little bit. A great example is I think it's the Resident Evil 2, I don't know, 1 or 2. Whenever you're going through the hallway, in the original, dogs break in or bust in through the windows and scare you and attack you as a player because you're not ready for it. In the remake, you go through that hallway and if you've played it before, you as the player are like, okay, I'm ready for this. I know you're going to do this to me, devs. And you go through the room, nothing happens. And then eventually you come back. The second time you come through the room, then the dogs bust through. It's like a mix-up because they had to keep in the dog jump scare window section, but they wanted to shake up when it happened so you weren't expecting it. They do that in Dead Space 2. You come back to the Ishimura, and the delousing room, the first time you go through it, nothing happens. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I guess it's safe. The second time you come through it, everyone starts fucking with you.
The elevators are another place where you think you're safe most of the time, and the one like freight elevator where it's bigger, Like I saw that one coming. Of like, this elevator is big enough to be attacked. There's a vent on the ceiling there. They use the vents. So the one elevator that you do have a battle with a few necromorphs, they do give you enough information to be like, they're coming this time.
The same thing as in the remake is that when I got to that freight elevator, they make sure to keep that there. Every time they make sure you have to jump on that thing like 8 or 9 times. Just if you're efficient, it's like 8 or 9 times to get through the whole segment. Every time I got on, it's like, when's it going to happen? There's no way they put this thing here without using it. And I won't say what number it is, but it's just the point where you're like,
oh, it's not going to happen.
No, you don't think it's not going to happen. It's like, okay, they're going to wait till the last time I have to walk through here. And that's when it pops on you. And it's also genius with like you said, the vents, because the vents are in every single room in the entire game. And there are entire sections of the game that's like, there are certain parts in hallways, like there's no enemies whatsoever. So you're constantly worried, like, is this going to be a room or is this a safe place?
Yeah, you'd never know, because the safe rooms look safe and the danger rooms sometimes are actually safe. You know, because the environmental hazards, like the room, like you're in a like a furnace and there's fire shooting out of the walls and everything. Well, the room is dangerous, but there's not necromorphs coming to attack you, so it's safe to just kind of stand there and manage your inventory or whatever. But you always are on your toes, especially with the audio, because suddenly you'll just hear like something explode or like a pipe fall, and you're just, are we safe? Or is that a real thing, or is that scripted?
Well, I don't know about you guys. I'll say that leads into one of the best moments in the game. It's like in I think chapter 3 or 4. I won't spoil it because it's like the coolest moment. It's the long hallway and you just hear the bong, bong. You just hear something smacking against a wall. And it's a hallway that you have to turn a corner on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably the coolest moment in the game, in my opinion, at least off the top of my head. And it's so cool. It's like, I don't even want to spoil it. Anyone who's never played this game should experience it. Dillon, this is your first time playing through. What did you think of that moment? Because I know you remember it.
Yeah, the moments of coming up with other crew members that are still with us. The one that actually stuck with me the most was the woman who's just laughing maniacally and then eventually shoots herself in the head. That one actually stuck with me even more than the repeated bongs.
This lady right here, I know exactly what you mean. I labeled this clip, seriously, why can't I have her gun though? You make your way through here and you come across a room full of blood and a bunch of corpses, and you see this crazy lady.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, I don't know if I want to get near them or not, and then it makes a choice for you.
I did get very near. I got all up into her. Like anytime there was an actual human, I was trying to get into contact. Even as I said, when we're locked away and can't get to them, it took me a while to realize, oh, when it's set up like this, they're teaching us a new mechanic. Don't go around the side and try to help, even when they're yelling, help!
Yeah, at the very beginning, there's a guy trying to get into the door whenever you get your plasma cutter, and you open the door by shooting a fuse, which is teaching you that you have to sometimes shoot fuses to open up certain things. You shoot the fuse, open up the door, and then the guy gets killed as soon as you open the door. And it's like, oh, okay, whatever. You can't save anyone. That's
the interesting thing, because you think in a big scary ship like this that it'd just be empty. It's like, no, there are several NPCs that are still human and they're non-aggressive in any way. So, but every single way is a little bit different. Some of them, a lot of them end up killing themselves, and there's just one where you just see a girl laughing you can't talk to her, she doesn't talk, and you just walk away. She never stops laughing maniacally.
That's right. I was getting those two, putting them together. The one that just laughs maniacally and the one that just pow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the human interactions. The humans. You don't kill any humans. There are a few hostile humans, and it's actually even more satisfying that the necromorphs take out the hostile humans that you can't wait to get your hands on.
Exactly.
Are you referring specifically to Mercer?
Mercer and Kendra were the two. Yeah, I couldn't think of Mercer's name because Mercer, he sticks around for several chapters. He's that's one of the sections where he takes away your oxygen, where I actually did die due to oxygen deprivation because I couldn't make it through on the first run or few.
Yeah, that guy is basically your only direct antagonist the entire game. I mean, obviously the necromorphs and you going insane and the race against time and everything like that. But the only person that actually is like fucking with you is Mercer. He is trying to make you fail, stop you from doing what you're doing, and he even unleashes the regenerator guy on you. And it's such a pain in the ass. There's a section where in the game, the necromorphs, you cut off their limbs and, well, they die. But as Monday said, all of the necromorphs don't actually die because they're still, all of their cells are still alive. But the regenerator specifically, even after you cut off its limbs, it will grow them back and keep coming at you. There's almost nothing you can do to stop it other than just run.
The two different areas where you have to use the environment to get rid of the regenerators. The first one, it took me quite a while. The second time, I was like, oh, all right, there's some way to get rid of this regenerator, just like the first time with the environment. And they actually give you the tip of the hat to let you know the second time around of how to fire him up and get rid of him for good.
Nice pun.
Andy said, it's basically unstoppable. And as I mentioned earlier, the only way to kill certain necromorphs, I believe there's only 5 in the entire series, because 3 they just throw a bunch of them at you, which is kind of annoying, is to kill them faster than they can regenerate. And that can include setting them on fire with a jet engine.
It's really hard to stand in front of a jet thruster and live through it. At least from personal experience. It didn't work well last Monday.
Shout out to me. I will say, though, as many times as I've played this game, that segment is still stressful because you have to basically chop off all its limbs, stasis it, and then hope you can run back and activate the thrusters in time for the engine to kill it.
If you have stasis on that part, in that room, unless I missed it, I ran around and I was running around and I couldn't find a stasis refill. So I had to get clever. I pulled out my force gun and I pushed him like into a corner, cut off all of his limbs, and then ran in there as fast as possible as he's getting up and regenerating. He starts walking through it because I guess the game hadn't registered the tick damage for the flames. And so he starts walking and makes like 2 steps before the like scripted death happens and all his limbs start melting off. I started panicking. I'm like, am I really just soft stuck because I don't have stasis?
Yeah, no, that game, it's very easy to soft lock yourself. That's why they added all the O2 and stasis stations. The difference is that I'm a hoarder with a lot of these things. So stasis specifically, I'm like, I could use stasis here, but I won't. I only ever use it if it's a puzzle and a puzzle that I have to do it, or there's a station on the wall, or if I'm losing a fight so badly, it's like I have no choice. I can't swing my way out of this one. No gun will save me. I just stasis the floor and everything around me slows down. I prefer not to carry more than 1 recharge in me at all times because that could be used for more ammo or health, or I could use that for treasure, which is another aspect of the inventory management, where all your guns except for the starting plasma cutter, you have to find a schematic, bring it back to the shop, and then have it built by spending money.
Or it'll be awarded to you way later on. Like, for example, you can find the line gun in Chapter 2, or it'll automatically be added to the store like in Chapter 6. But that's way later than you really want to use it, so if you're not going around exploring all these nooks and crannies and able to carry these schematics back to the store, you won't get stuff for a long time. Like medium med kits, I don't think you get those until Chapter 4.
I remember if you look in the bathroom in Chapter 1, there is a large med kit hidden in one of the stalls. And every time I play that, like, because the elevator in that one is specifically annoyingly long, because it's like a tone setter. Mm-hmm. Last time I played it, it's like, oh, my inventory's full because I was doing pretty well. So I ran all the way, went to the elevator, went to the store, and then had to go all the way back. It's like, I'm not giving up a large health pack. That's more worth its weight in gold, and I will never use it if I can help it.
Right, it's 5,000. It's 5,000 credits. If I don't use it, that's a lot of money. That's half a power node.
See, that makes sense. But for me, it's like, well, no. If I use it, I've wasted it. But I will never spend another of it because what if I do need it? It's something what I would like to call acute schizophrenia and paranoia in a video game that makes no difference on anyone's lives.
Well, I mean, I totally relate. That's what I was saying with my Dead Space 3 inventory. I have so much shit in that inventory for no reason.
Dead Space 3. We can make an entire 3 episodes just about how I feel about Dead Space 3. It's a confusing one.
My roommate was giving me a heads up. He is not a fan of Dead Space 3. He thinks 2 is the best one.
2 is the best one.
No one likes Dead Space 3.
I love Dead Space 3. if you compare Dead Space 3 to 2 or 1, then you're not going to like it. But if you just take what it is alone and just enjoy the fact that it's another Dead Space game, it's a really fun game. And it's the only one that's co-op.
Yeah, no, I like the co-op aspect of it. Me and my buddy played it. And I won't go on too much of a tangent. There are a lot of interesting things about that game because you play as first player plays Isaac and the second player plays Carver, a new character who's a military man. And the fact that I mentioned earlier, the marker causes people around it to develop schizophrenia and paranoia. They start seeing things that aren't there. Isaac is already used to it because he's had 3 games now. That's where he's experienced with the markers effects on him, and he's still crazy, but
he's used to it. And he's handling it.
Yeah, he's kind of used to it. But Carver is all new to this. So there are cutscenes in 3 where if you play as Carver, you see things there that Isaac does not see. There, you see all these caskets when he plays Isaac because people are dying. But in Carver's vision, he's seeing giant birthday presents because he lost his son just before 3 takes place. He's seeing birthday presents, birthday party stuff because it was like a couple of days after his birthday that the kid died. Which I'm like, that is so cool. You guys, when the team is allowed to do their thing, it's so interesting. But EA has to be EA, and they're I don't know if you guys know this. The reason Dead Space got shut down until the remake is that Dead Space 1 came out. It had a very small budget because they're like, this team's like, hey, Visceral's like, we want to make a new IP for horror games. And EA's like, fine, just make it like Resident Evil 4 because it was the early 2000s and every game had to be Resident Evil 4. So it came out. It did incredibly well for a small scale horror game. And they said, well, we want to make a sequel. And they said, you're going to make a sequel, but here's some changes. We're going to have a multiplayer mode, online shooter mode, which no one played. And it's, you know what, in my opinion, I think the extra money and with EA sticking their finger in the pie, so to speak, it wasn't bad. And then they're like, you know what? This game sold, I think it sold a little bit better proportionally, but I think it had less copies sold because I think value went up. And then Dead Space 3 was coming around. They said, we want you to sell Call of Duty numbers. That is impossible for any game other than Call of Duty and maybe FIFA.
Right.
So
yeah.
they're like, well, you're going to put online co-op. You're going to have much more action-based. You can do roles now. You're going to have the microtransactions. You're going to have the Connect setup where if you yell certain swear words, it does automatic reloads for your guns, which is probably the most edgy 2010 thing I've ever heard of.
It was gimmicky. It was cool. I liked it.
It was
I never used it,
but
it's cool.
No one ever used it. It's just like, oh, that's kind of cool because you had to unbox your Connect, and no one wants to do that. And then when the game came out, it sold pretty well, but EA looked at it and said, this doesn't sell Call of Duty numbers. This only sold, I think, 1.4 million, maybe significantly. I might be completely wrong. This is my memory from like 10 years ago. And they said, you know what? Dead Space is a dead franchise. We're going to kill you, and we're going to kill off this franchise and Visceral. And now I hate them.
Yeah, fuck EA.
That's funny. Like the studio interference, when it gets too much, it can ruin the experience. And then the studio heads, they can't blame themselves. So, yeah, of course, it's a dead franchise because it wasn't our fault for changing what this was going to be.
That's why I was so upset when they announced the remake because all my friends know I'm a huge Dead Space head. So when the game was announced, I was like, it was a Saturday, or I took my day off, so I was sleeping till noon, and I woke up to like 50 messages on Discord. Like, dude, Mondays, look at this, and a bunch of trailers. And my first thought was, shit, I'm gonna play this. And to full respect to the devs who made the game, the remake, what was their name? I saved it here. Motive Studio. They did a fantastic job. I have no issue with them. I just hate EA.
Yeah, fuck EA. Motive did a great job though. They nailed it.
No, they did great. When Dead Space 2 remake comes out, which it will be announced probably next year, I can promise you that. I'm gonna play that one too. I won't like it. I'll be a whiny little bitch the entire time, but I will play the hell out of that game.
I'll have to get a new computer just to play it, but there's no way I'm going to miss out on Dead Space 2 remake. Dead Space 1, whatever. I'll play it when I play it, but Dead Space 2, I'll buy a new computer for that.
It's also cool because if you pre-order Dead Space 1 remake, I pre-ordered like an hour before it was released, you get a free copy of Dead Space 2 on Steam.
Yeah, I already have it on Steam and EA, but it is nice that they just give you a copy of it to be like, hey, here's Dead Space 2 just in case.
I don't know about you guys, but until this year, I was a console-only kind of guy. I spent most of my money putting together a PC over the course of a year. So I've only been into PC gaming for like the last 7-8 months or so.
Well, welcome to the family.
I only own a Switch, and my roommate, he's the big gamer. He's the one who has the current Xbox X and PS5. So I'm playing catch up. PS2 was the last one I kind of sort of got into, and now I'm playing catch up with all these fun experiences I missed out on. Dead Space, fun gaming experience, fun storytelling. Absolutely great job by the studio, the devs rather.
The devs don't give EA a single compliment ever.
Yeah. Fuck EA. I think I've made that clear. Before we wrap up for today, let's talk about our favorite part of this game. Dillon, why don't you go first?
My favorite part is, I think when Mercer gets it. Actually, but 2 kills. I have to also mention Hammond's death is devastating because the whole time they're throwing suspicion on Hammond like he's the traitor, and Hammond's death is like the inverse of Mercer's death, where it's so satisfying. It's devastating. Of like, okay, I finally trust him. He's on my side. So I have to put both those, Mercer's death and Hammond's death, as 2 of my favorite parts, and neither one gameplay, all story.
I think that's a strong contender. I have the clip of Hammond's death, which I'll play here in a second. Mercer's death is great because he sets it up and he gets exactly what he wants, and he stands in front of one of the infectors, and it goes to start infecting him. And if you're fast enough, you can go into that room, and before the infector is able to actually convert him, you can kill the infector and blue ball the guy so he didn't get to ascend the way he wanted to. It's a nice way to just be like, fuck you, Mercer.
I hate Mercer so much the entire game. He's fucking with you. I make that like my priority in that chapter of the game. It's like, no, I don't care if I have to reset the entire chapter. I am not letting him transform into Necromorph. He does not get what he wants. I have burned so much ammo and health on that stupid regenerator. It made me go through my stasis. It's like, no, he doesn't get what he wants. If it was up to me, he would, I don't know. I make it a point of pride. It's like, if I shoot him, I'm like, yes, that's this. I don't care if I die the next fight. I win.
Yeah, absolutely. Just preventing him from getting what he wants. That's the victory. I don't care that you're dead. In fact, that I'm glad, but you're not coming back as a necromorph. I'm going to clear every necromorph with this entire unitology wing, and nobody's getting you.
Yeah, idiot. You go to human hell, not stupid alien hell.
But yeah, finally you meet up with Hammond after, I think the last time you saw him was in the food storage area whenever you're killing the big lung poisony guys.
I believe so, yeah. He's on the ground, he's in bad shape, and he wants to come help. But and once again, you're suspicious of him, that he's going to betray you while he's coming to help. But he's in no form to actually help. He's hurting in the food storage.
Been a while since I played this because they do his death slightly different in actually noticeably different in the remake, but not in a way that I think is bad. I think all the deaths in that game are done appropriately, but in unexpected ways.
Hammond did not deserve this.
No, he was the only good guy, and he was the only non-psychopath that in the game. Which I will not spoil anything for you, Annie and Dillon. The remake does address the fact that it's like, well, in the first game, Hammond's not affected by the marker's schizophrenia, so they retcon that a little bit. I won't say how.
Oh, that's great.
It's always like, well, how come Hammond's normal, but Isaac, the non-talking guy, is going crazy the entire game?
Mondays, what was your favorite part of Dead Space 1?
That is a hard question for me because it is one of my favorite games of all time, but it is kind of a cheap one. I think my favorite moment in the entire game is the very last cutscene, as you guys know. Because it is such, I'm not even gonna say. Do you have the clip?
I do. Yeah.
We're gonna play it, and then I'll explain. It's also the only time in the game you can see Isaac's face, aside from the beginning.
Finally, watching the end of of your girlfriend's death
and turning it off,
and roll credits.
That is like at the end of a TV season. It's like, well, we don't know if we're gonna get picked up again. We're gonna put a cliffhanger at the very end. That moment, it's such a good 1-2 in my opinion, because the entire game it's like you're chasing after your girlfriend who you may or may not know is dead. So, and then the very end, he's watching the video one last time because they bring it up 3 or 4 times, and he turns it off because he's like, well, I don't want to see this happen, and he's trying to let go. And then he looks over, and then the quote unquote ghost of his girlfriend is right there now to haunt him forever, which is Dillon. It's one of the better parts. It's like the main aspect of Dead Space 2. Nicole, who we all know now is dead, becomes one of the most important parts of Dead Space 2 and one of the main characters.
Yep. Despite the fact that she's dead.
And it's also, I call that a good jump scare because it's not, this one's no build up, and it's like the one in the game that's like, there's no build up, there's no implication to it, that is completely sidetracked. And I think every game that's a horror game gets one. They can have one jump scare that's completely out of nowhere. But even then, they kind of build up just a little bit because Isaac gets that look on his face. It's like when you feel like someone's watching me. Yeah. But you kind of expect, oh, is there another human? No, it is a ghost which don't exist. It's such a good moment.
The ending of Dead Space 2 almost mirrors the end of this one. Not exactly, and I won't say why or what happens, but Isaac is on a ship very similar, and he looks around just to check, is there somebody on this ship?
We're not going to say how it ends, but he has that exact same look, and when you watch it, you're like, oh no, what? And then the moment happens. It's
1, 2, and 3 kind of end on a cliffhanger because they didn't know whether they're going to get another game or not.
See, that's why I hate 3 the most.
Yeah.
Because 3 has that, and then they get the DLC, which was all right, but they just reused every point in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it leaves the biggest cliffhanger where, I can say this much, you go back to Earth, which is never even shown at any point in the entire franchise.
It's shown at the beginning of 3. You're on Earth.
No, that's not on Earth, are you? No, you're on a planet. You're on another planet? No, because it's a big point because they mentioned that
No, you're right. Yeah, I don't know the name of it, but it starts with an A or something.
Yeah, there's necromorphs on there, and they make a point to say that necromorphs are not on Earth. That's the one, because if necromorphs get on the most populated planet in the galaxy, that's a big problem.
Yep, that was a slip up for me. Yeah, you're right. You're not on Earth at the beginning.
You caught me for a second. Like, oh man, did I just make a complete ass out of myself on that little rant?
I don't know what planet it is. I'll have to look it up, but I think it's like, it starts with an A. I think it's like Arcadia or something like that.
The only planets that matter are Aegis 7 from 1 and Tau Volantis from 3, which is not a great planet, but it's aesthetically the coolest one.
It is important, like lore-wise.
Yeah, but the lore in 3 is not as important, in my opinion, and it's correct, so...
Yeah, no, you're right. Things get a little wacky, but, whatever.
It's muddled at that point, but I wouldn't say it's bad, it's just... the whole game itself, if they make a Dead Space 3 remake, they need to basically put the whole story in overhaul there.
They need to actually put an ending in that game.
Yeah, but I will say Dead Space 3 has my favorite suits in it. I love the winter, the environmental suits. It's so much cooler.
Yeah, the suits are really good in that. The suit is really cool in 2 and 3 because everything on it is mechanical, kind of like everything was in Dead Space 1. The helmet is like Iron Man's, where it kind of folds in on itself and comes off and comes in and out of your armor. It's really cool. The suit in 2 and 3 is really, really nice.
Well, yeah, it's different because in 1, you're only, as an engineer on the Ishimura, you only have access to engineering suits based off your rig. So all you're getting is just higher quality defensive suits because certain areas are more dangerous than others. That's why I get like scraps of copper all over them. Dead Space 2, you have a variety of suits from security suits to, which one of my favorite things is that the first suit you get in 2 is the best suit in 1 because it's got the highest, it's more combat based. But there's like security suits. There's a hacker suit if you got the GameStop pre-order, which I did not. And in 3, it becomes environmental suits. There's a couple of different ones, but when you're on Tau Volantis, the temperature and the climate is so different than all the climate controlled zones from the first 2 games. You need to have heavy weather suits, which I think look the coolest.
Yeah, they're so bulky and big, and it just looks great. But my favorite part of Dead Space 1 is it's not story related, and it's not even like really gameplay related. It is just the theme. The theme of Dead Space it's incomparable. It sets itself up, and it constantly builds on everything that it sets up to you, and reaffirms exactly when it needs to. The number one thing for me out of everything is just the UI, the HUD. It's so cool. It's so sci-fi, and I love it.
Well, I think going along with the theme, it's Dead Space 1 probably does it the best, where they use the old adage, in space no one can hear you scream. And in the initial trailer, it's like they play that very slow, creepy rendition of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, is to show like, again, space is a horrible place, and that everything that it kind of turns into this concept that's that, as a child you look up into the stars, it's like, oh, anything could be out there. It's all about exploration. Dead Space takes that childhood whimsy and light in your eyes and says, no, everywhere outside of your home is a terrible place, and you should be happy with where you were, but humanity got too greedy.
I think that's beautiful. Humanity got too greedy.
Oh, that's I love dark sci-fi, and almost all of them involve, well, humanity went too far. You should have been happy in your caves a million years ago, but you guys had to go outside and see what that big ball of fire in the sky was.
Damn our hubris. All right, well, we're going to wrap up now. Dillon, why don't you plug anything you'd like?
My channel, Dillon from Somewhere. I'm doing TikTok around the clock, where we check out what was going on TikTok Live tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Kinky Loco, a beloved chatter, I will be having an interview with in less than an hour. So looking forward to chatting with another beloved chatter.
All right, and Mondays Weekly. Where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter, my two main places. At Mondays Weekly, spelled exactly how it sounds, or whatever. I'm bad at this. And I also have a YouTube channel, which I've been working on at also Mondays Weekly, where I have an upload of my interview with at Merlogic on Twitter, aka the famous Wonder Bread guy, the man who's very famous for commissioning hundreds of artists to draw white women with chainsaws and Wonder Bread. He is,
well, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. I love Merlogic.
Yeah, he's one of the most interesting people I've ever met. And on top of that, I am in the middle of writing my first game review. I finally got the second draft done. I'm going to get some people to review it for me. I'm reviewing Goodbye Volcano High, the game that's a bit infamous on that PlayStation State of Play from 2019 about a bunch of teenage dinosaurs and their melodramatic bullshit. Spoiler alert. I went in. This is one of those rare moments where I try to go in positively, give them a fair chance. It's not good. Do not buy this game. I will never say that unless it's real bad. I hope you guys check it out. I try to be direct, but also add some funny to it.
Thank you very much for joining us Mondays. Dillon, I thank you for joining us as well. And to everyone out there, thank you. We'll see you next time.